The unlikely encounter. Olivia Reed squinted through her camera viewfinder, capturing the mist rolling dramatically over Lake Wakatipu. The weather forecast had predicted a minor storm system, but the darkening clouds suggested something far more. Serious was brewing. She clicked another shot, satisfied with the moody atmosphere, but aware she should head back to the lodge soon. "Excuse me, miss. You need to return immediately." A staff member in a rain jacket approached, voice raised against the strengthening wind. "The Meteorological Service just issued a severe weather warning. Management's called for all guests to remain indoors." Olivia nodded, packing her equipment with practiced efficiency. This wasn't ideal timing for her National Geographic assignment documenting New Zealand's changing alpine ecosystems, but she'd learned to adapt to nature's whims over her decade-long career. Back at Kopu Lodge, an exclusive retreat nestled. In the southern Alps, staff bustled about with emergency preparations. The elegant timber and glass structure, usually the epitome of serene luxury, hummed with tension. "Ms. Reed?" The manager, Jacinta, intercepted her at the entrance. "I'm afraid we've received evacuation orders for non-essential personnel. Most staff will be leaving within the hour." "Are we evacuating too?" Olivia asked, shaking raindrops from her jacket. "No, the roads to Queenstown are already flooding. The authorities have advised everyone to shelter in place." Jacinta lowered her voice. "There's only one other guest besides yourself. Mr. Sterling in the North Wing suite. We've stocked both kitchens and emergency supplies, and our maintenance. Supervisor Raj will remain on site for emergencies." Olivia vaguely recalled glimpsing a tall, bearded man keeping to himself the past 2 days. "How long will this last?" "At least 5 days, according to forecasts. The storm system is unprecedented." Jacinta handed her a folder. "Emergency protocols, contact information, and lodge operations are detailed here. The generators should maintain power, but conserve where possible." Within the hour, the staff convoy departed, leaving the massive lodge eerily quiet except for the intensifying wind and rain battering the windows. Olivia stood in the grand living area, watching sheets of rain transform the picturesque view into a gray blur. Her solitude was interrupted by footsteps on the hardwood floor. "I assume you're the photographer?" a deep voice asked. She turned to face a man who looked markedly different from the shadowy figure she'd spotted previously. Clean-shaven now, with sharp features and penetrating blue eyes that contrasted with his dark hair. Something about him seemed familiar, though she couldn't place it. "Olivia Reed," she offered, extending her hand. "Wildlife photographer. Nate Sterling." His handshake was brief but firm. "Looks like we're stranded together." The name clicked into place. Nathaniel Sterling, founder of Sterling Innovations, the tech company recently embroiled in a massive data privacy scandal. His face had been splashed across business magazines for months before he disappeared from public view. "Wonderful," she muttered, not bothering to hide her sarcasm. "Trapped in paradise with a billionaire who thinks privacy is optional." His expression hardened. "I see my reputation precedes me." "Don't worry, Ms. Reed. I have no interest in your data or your company." Thunder cracked overhead, making the lights flicker momentarily. A perfect punctuation to their chilly introduction. "Well," Olivia said, retrieving her camera bag, "this lodge is big enough for both of us to pretend the other doesn't exist." Nate's mouth twitched, almost resembling a smile. 5 days of strategic avoidance it is." As she headed toward her suite, Olivia had the distinct feeling that Mother Nature had a twisted sense of humor. Of all the people to be quarantined with, during a once-in-a-century storm, it had to be the man whose company had compromised the personal information of millions. The rain intensified, and somewhere in the distance, a tree crashed to the ground. It was going to be a long 5 days. Friction and fire, by day 3, the storm had intensified beyond all forecasts. Rain hammered against the lodge's reinforced windows, while wind howled through the surrounding pines like a living entity. Inside, Another storm was brewing. "That's not how you do it," Olivia said, watching Nate struggle with the fireplace. "You're stacking the logs too tightly. They need air circulation." Nate straightened, brushing his hands on his jeans. "I didn't realize wildlife photography included a certification in fire building." Growing up with a forest ranger father does. She knelt beside him, rearranging the logs. "My dad taught me that survival skills matter more than fancy degrees, Let. Me guess, you think my fancy degrees make me incompetent at basic tasks?" Nate's voice held a sharp edge. Olivia struck a match, igniting the kindling. "I think people who've never had to fend for themselves often lack practical skills." The fire caught, flames dancing upward, casting a warm glow across their faces. Nate watched silently, his expression unreadable. "Power's likely to go soon," Raj had warned them earlier before retreating to his quarters in the service wing. "The backup generator will handle essentials, but we should conserve energy." Now, as if on cue, the lights flickered and died, leaving only firelight illuminating the great room. "Perfect timing," Nate muttered, pulling out his phone's flashlight. "I'll check the circuit breakers." "I'll get more candles from the storage closet," Olivia replied, already moving toward the hallway. They worked in separate orbits for the next hour, establishing small islands of light throughout the common areas. When they reunited in the kitchen, Olivia found Nate inventorying their food supplies. "Raj said the refrigerated items should be consumed first," he said without looking up. "I thought I'd make dinner before everything spoils." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "You cook? Another skill you assumed I lacked?" There was no hostility in his voice now, just weariness. "My mother insisted all her children learn. Said being wealthy was no excuse for helplessness." Something in his tone made Olivia pause. "What are you making?" "Pasta carbonara. Simple enough with what we have." He glanced up. "Unless you'd prefer something else." "No, that's fine." She hesitated, then added, "I can make a salad with the greens that need using." They worked in surprisingly comfortable silence, moving around each other in the spacious kitchen. Olivia stole glances at Nate's methodical preparation, noting his confident knife skills as he diced pancetta. "Where did you learn photography?" Nate asked suddenly. "Self-taught, mostly. Started with my mother's old film camera when I was 12. Olivia tossed the salad. "I loved how it let me capture moments without having to explain them." Nate nodded. "I understand that appeal." Over dinner, illuminated by candlelight, the conversation flowed more easily than either expected. Olivia found herself reluctantly impressed by Nate's knowledge of conservation efforts. His company had funded several wildlife corridors in threatened ecosystems. "Why technology?" she asked. "You clearly care about environmental issues." Nate swirled his wine thoughtfully. "I believed technology could solve our biggest problems. Still do, despite recent complications." "You mean despite your company violating millions of people's privacy?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. His face shuddered. "You've read the headlines, obviously, but headlines rarely tell the complete story." "Then what is the complete story?" Before he could answer, a deafening crack shook the building. They rushed to the windows to see a massive pine had fallen across the eastern wing. "That's near Raj's quarters," Olivia said, alarm evident in her voice. They grabbed flashlights and rain gear, racing through the darkened hallways. Water already seeped under doorways as they called Raj's name. When they reached his room, they found him pinned beneath a section of collapsed ceiling. "My leg," he groaned. "I think it's broken." Together they carefully freed him and assessed the damage, a clean fracture that needed immobilization. With Nate's direction and Olivia's steady hands, they created a makeshift splint. "I need a hospital," Raj said through gritted teeth. "Roads are still impassable," Nate replied, already on his satellite phone. "But I can get a medical evacuation helicopter once there's a break in the storm." Olivia looked at him with newfound Respect as he spoke authoritatively with emergency services, arranging for the earliest possible evacuation. Hours later, with Raj resting under pain medication they'd found in the first aid supplies, Olivia and Nate sat exhausted by the fire. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for knowing what to do back there." Nate stared into the flames. "My brother was a thrill seeker. I learned emergency response to keep up with his accidents." "Was? He died 2 years ago." Nate's voice was flat. "Rock climbing in Yosemite." The simple admission hung between them, shifting something fundamental in their dynamic. For the first time, Olivia saw past the billionaire caricature to the man beneath, a man who had experienced loss, who had depths she hadn't bothered to consider. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the lodge, the atmosphere had undeniably changed. Walls coming down. The morning after Raj's evacuation, Olivia woke to an unsettling silence. The constant drumming of rain had stopped, replaced by an eerie stillness. She made her way to the great room where massive windows revealed a transformed landscape. Snow had replaced rain overnight, blanketing everything in pristine white. "Weather service says we're in the eye of the storm," Nate said, not looking up from his laptop. "Another system moving in by evening." Olivia poured herself coffee from the pot he'd brewed. "How's Raj?" "Stabilized at Queenstown Hospital. Surgery." "Went well." He finally glanced up, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. "The evacuation team said it'll be at least 3 more days before they can reach us. The main access road has washed out completely. So we're truly on our own now. Appears so." He closed his laptop. "I need to check the generator's fuel levels and secure the damaged section before the next wave hits." The temperature's dropping rapidly. Olivia set down her mug. "I'll help." They spent the morning working side by side, sealing off the compromised eastern wing and taking inventory of their remaining supplies. The physical labor and shared purpose eased the tension between them, creating a rhythm of cooperation neither had expected. By afternoon, with preparations complete, they found themselves drawn to the fireplace again, watching snowflakes swirl beyond the windows. "You never answered my question," Olivia said after a comfortable silence. "About what really happened with your company." Nate's jaw tightened, but he didn't deflect this time. "The privacy breach was real, but it wasn't due to corporate greed or negligence as reported." He met her eyes directly. "It was my brother's code." "Your brother? The one who died?" "Thomas was brilliant, but reckless. He developed an algorithm that could predict consumer behavior with unprecedented accuracy. I didn't know he'd implemented it without proper data protection protocols." Nate's voice remained steady, but his hands clenched. "When the breach was discovered, he was already gone. The company was facing collapse. Our employees would lose everything." "So you took the blame," Olivia finished softly. "I protected his legacy. Our parents had already lost one son." His smile was bitter. "Besides, the world loves to hate tech billionaires. I was the perfect villain." The revelation hung between them, reshaping everything Olivia thought she knew about him. Before she could respond, Nate turned the conversation. "What about you? Always wanted to be perpetually nomadic, or was that an acquired taste?" Olivia considered deflecting, but found herself answering honestly. "My parents had what looked like the perfect marriage from the outside. Dad's ranger station, Mom's art studio in their charming mountain home." She traced patterns in the condensation on her water glass. What nobody saw was Mom slowly disappearing into Dad's life until nothing of her remained. "That affected you." "I watched her dreams shrink to fit his world. Her art became postcards of his forests instead of the abstract paintings she'd once loved." Olivia's voice hardened. "When I was 16, she finally left, said she'd wasted 20 years becoming someone she didn't recognize." And you decided relationships weren't worth the risk, Nate observed. I decided I wouldn't let anyone else define my boundaries. She met his gaze. My camera lets me capture the world without being captured by it. The lights flickered again as wind began to pick up outside, signaling the storm's return. We should check the firewood supply, Nate said, standing. Temperatures dropping faster than predicted. Hours later, as darkness fell early under heavy storm clouds, they found themselves huddled in the kitchen, cooking together again, this time a hearty stew from remaining fresh ingredients. The worsening blizzard had knocked out power completely, leaving them dependent on the fireplace and gas stove. We should conserve heat tonight, Nate said practically. The great room has the fireplace and enough blankets to make comfortable sleeping arrangements. Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the strange intimacy of the situation. They arranged cushions and blankets before the fire, creating a makeshift camp that reminded her of expeditions in remote locations. As they sat wrapped in blankets, sharing a bottle of wine, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Nate described growing up in his family's shadow, always the cautious counterbalance to his brother's brilliance. Olivia told stories of close calls in the wilderness, the flash flood in Tanzania, the unexpected encounter with a snow leopard in Nepal. You live completely in the moment, Nate observed. I've spent my life planning 5 steps ahead. And where has all that planning gotten you? She asked, not unkindly. He considered the question, firelight playing across his features. Hiding in a snowbound lodge with a woman who initially despised me. Their laughter mingled, genuine and unguarded. When it faded, something else remained in its place, a tension of a different sort, electric and uncertain. Outside, the storm reached its peak, nature's fury providing a counterpoint to the growing warmth between them. Neither mentioned how. During the night, they moved closer to share body heat, or how Nate's hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining as if they'd always belonged together. The inevitable. Full morning light filtered through frost-covered windows, casting prismatic patterns across the floor. Olivia woke first, momentarily disoriented to find herself nestled against Nate's chest, his arm draped protectively around her waist. She carefully extracted herself, moving to the windows to assess the damage. The storm had transformed the landscape into a winter wonderland that sparkled under clear blue skies. Pristine snow blanketed everything, trees heavy with white, the lake a mirror reflecting mountains and sky. Perfect conditions for photography. She retrieved her camera, silently slipping outside onto the covered deck. The cold air stung her lungs. As she captured the untouched beauty, nature's calm after chaos, a metaphor she wasn't ready to examine too closely. Breathtaking, Nate's voice came from behind her. She turned, camera still raised, and instinctively captured him. Tousled hair, morning stubble, borrowed sweater too small across his shoulders. Unguarded in a way she'd never seen him. Sorry, she lowered the camera. Professional habit. No, I'd like to see how you see the world. He moved beside her, respecting her space while still close enough that she felt his warmth. Any word from emergency services? Roads should be cleared by tomorrow afternoon. She tried to ignore the unexpected disappointment this news brought. The satellite phone is working again if you need to contact your company. Nate nodded, his expression unreadable. And you? Eager to resume your assignment? The magazine extended my deadline, given the circumstances. She hesitated. Actually, the storm created some incredible opportunities. The ecosystem's response to extreme weather events is exactly what my piece explores. They spent the morning clearing paths around the lodge, working in comfortable synchronicity. Nate proved surprisingly knowledgeable about the local flora, pointing out native species emerging from the snow. Sterling Innovations funded a biodiversity study here 3 years ago, he explained when she questioned him. I visited during the initial surveys. By afternoon, they'd established a semblance of normalcy. Electricity partially restored, damaged areas secured. With immediate concerns addressed, the awareness of their temporary situation became impossible to ignore. "Come with me," Olivia said suddenly. "There's something I want to show you." She led him to a small ridge overlooking the lake, where the sunset painted the snow-covered landscape in gold and pink. She positioned him, arranged her tripod, and set the timer. "What are you doing?" he asked as she hurried to stand beside him. "Documenting the moment," she replied as the shutter clicked. "Sometimes we need evidence that something was real." The implications hung between them as they stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the sun sink behind distant peaks. That evening, they prepared dinner together as if they'd been doing it for years, Olivia seasoning the remaining venison while Nate roasted vegetables. They'd discovered a bottle of exceptional Pinot Noir in the lodge's cellar, which they opened in silent celebration of their survival. "I've been thinking," Nate said as they lingered over dessert, "about what happens after tomorrow." Olivia tensed. "Return to our separate worlds, I suppose. Does it have to be that way?" His voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed intensity. "What's the alternative? You have a multinational company to salvage. I have assignments booked through next year." She pushed her plate away. This was an anomaly, a temporary reality created by extraordinary circumstances. "Is that all it was to you?" The question hung between them, demanding an honesty she wasn't sure she was capable of giving. Before she could answer, Nate continued. "I've spent 2 years carrying the weight of my brother's mistakes, isolating myself from everything and everyone. Then a storm trapped me with the most frustratingly authentic person I've ever met." His smile was wry. "Someone who saw through every defensive wall I've built." Olivia's heart raced. "Nate, I'm not asking for promises, just possibility." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "The thought of you disappearing back into the world without—" She silenced him by leaning forward, pressing her lips to his. The kiss began tentatively, a question rather than a demand, but quickly deepened into something neither could deny. His hands framed her face with unexpected gentleness. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Olivia whispered, "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," he admitted, "but I think that's the point." Later, tangled in blankets before the fire, they traded quiet confessions. Olivia traced the scar on his shoulder as he described the climbing accident that had almost claimed his life alongside his brother's. Nate listened as she revealed her fear of becoming invisible within someone else's story. "I would never ask you to be less than who you are," he promised, fingers woven through her hair. "Your independence is what makes you extraordinary. And your integrity is what makes you different from what I assumed," she replied. As dawn approached, the reality of their impending separation cast a shadow over their newfound connection. Neither spoke of tomorrow, choosing instead to exist fully in these final hours of their temporary world, where storm-enforced isolation had created an unexpected sanctuary. Paths forward. The helicopter's rhythmic thrum grew louder as it approached the cleared helipad, rotors whipping snow into miniature cyclones. Olivia stood on the lodge's deck, camera bag slung over her shoulder, watching emergency personnel and the lodge's returning management team disembark. 3 weeks had passed since the storm. 3 weeks of returning to her assignment, photographing the landscape's recovery while sleeping alone in her suite on the opposite wing from Nate's. Their relationship had settled into a strange limbo, professional during days spent largely apart, intimate during evenings when they gravitated toward each other despite their mutual uncertainty. Now, watching Jacinta direct the incoming staff, Olivia felt the weight of impending decisions. Her editor had called yesterday. They needed her in Borneo next week for a time-sensitive project on orangutan conservation. "Ms. Reed," a crew member approached, "your transport to Queenstown is ready whenever you are." "Thank you. I'll be there shortly." She turned to find Nate standing in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "So it's official," he said, moving beside her. "The Great Escape. The roads have been clear for days," she reminded him. "We've both been choosing to stay." I had business calls to handle. His attempt at nonchalance failed miserably. Besides, someone needed to oversee the repairs. They stood in awkward silence, everything and nothing to say. "Borneo," she finally said. "The magazine needs me there by Tuesday." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment quickly masked. "Important assignment?" "Potentially award-winning." She hesitated. "I'll be there at least 2 months." Nate nodded slowly. "My board expects me back in San Francisco immediately. The company announcement about my return is scheduled for Monday." The mundane details of their separate lives felt jarring after the intensity of their shared experience. How quickly reality reasserted itself. His world of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions, hers of remote locations and solitary pursuits. "I should finish packing," she said when the silence stretched too long. Nate caught her wrist as she turned to leave. "Olivia, wait!" His touch sent familiar warmth through her. "Don't make this harder, Nate." "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "Finding the right words." "Then don't use words." She smiled sadly. "We both knew this had an expiration date." "What if it doesn't have to?" The question emerged with unexpected force. "What if there's another option?" "Like what?" "I follow you to California and hang my cameras on your penthouse wall. You abandon your company to track endangered species with me." She shook her head. "We live in different worlds." "Worlds can intersect." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a folded document. "Sterling Innovations is launching an environmental initiative, using our technology to monitor ecosystem changes and protect endangered habitats." Olivia took the paper, scanning the proposal outline. "This is something I've been considering for months but lacked the right perspective to implement." His eyes held hers. "We need someone who understands both the science and how to communicate it visually. A documentary series, educational components." "You're offering me a job?" She couldn't hide her disappointment. "I'm offering you a partnership." He stepped closer. "Independent contractor status, complete creative control. Your existing assignments incorporated as part of the larger project." His voice softened. "And yes, selfishly, a reason for our paths to cross regularly, on purpose, rather than by accident." Olivia studied him, searching for the catch. "You developed this entire initiative in 3 weeks?" "I had the framework before. The storm just," he smiled, "brought clarity." She looked back at the helicopter, then to the proposal in her hands. "I'd still need to go to Borneo." "I know. Your work matters. I would never ask you to compromise that." He took her hands in his. "But maybe when you're done, instead of booking the next assignment immediately, you might consider stopping in San Francisco. See if this proposal interests you professionally." "And personally?" she challenged. "Personally," his thumbs traced circles on her palms. "I'd like the chance to know you outside of crisis conditions, to see if what we found here can exist in the real world." Olivia felt herself wavering, the familiar fear of confinement battling against the unexpected longing his words evoked. "I'm not asking for forever right now," Nate continued. "Just for you to consider that your independence and us exploring this connection don't have to be mutually exclusive." In the distance, the helicopter pilot signaled that they needed to depart soon. Time, always their enemy, pressing in again. 2 months, she finally said. "I'll complete the Borneo assignment. Then I'll come to San Francisco to discuss the proposal." Her emphasis made it clear she meant more than just the environmental initiative. Relief flooded his features. "I can work with that." "No promises beyond that," she warned. "Just possibility." He echoed their earlier conversation, smile reaching his eyes. As the helicopter lifted off an hour later, Olivia watched the lodge shrink beneath her. The landscape bore the marks of the storm's fury, yet already showed signs of resilience and renewal. Trees bent but not broken, new growth emerging through melting snow. Her camera captured it all, transformation in progress, the beauty of adaptation. On her phone, a calendar entry marked 2 months hence. San Francisco, possibility. For the first time in years, Olivia found herself looking forward rather than simply looking through her viewfinder. The world remained vast and full of wonders to capture. But perhaps, she thought as mountains gave way to city lights below, there was room in her nomadic existence for a connection that enhanced rather than confined. Some storms, it seemed, cleared more than just the air.